Sir, where did you find this locket? Our mom used to have one like it.
Welcome back, family. We really appreciate all our viewers and wish to really thank you for supporting our channel by subscribing, watching, liking, and sharing our videos. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe now, as it helps this channel grow and allows us create and deliver premium Afro-Korean romance stories tailored just the way you would love it. Today's video will definitely make you emotional. Let's jump into it right away. The luxury chandeliers cast fractured light across the private dining room in Seoul's most exclusive restaurant. Silence hung thick in the air as two identical black violinists stood frozen mid-performance, their bows suspended above the strings. Every eye in the room turned toward them, politicians in tailored suits, crime lords with calculating gazes, and at the head of the table sat Kang Jae-Min himself. The Korean Mafia boss sat motionless, his sharp features carved from stone, his presence commanding the space without a single word. The silver dragon locket around his neck caught the light as he breathed. It was an unusual accessory for a man known for his ruthless efficiency and cold demeanor, but no one dared question it. The twin on the left, Zara, felt her heart hammering against her ribs. Her sister Amina gripped her violin tighter, her knuckles pale. They had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in their heads, during the flight from Lagos to Seoul, during the audition process, during every step that led them to this room. But now that they stood here, the words caught in Zara's throat. "Our mom used to have that same locket," Amina whispered, her voice barely audible but crystal clear in the suspended silence. Jaemin's fingers, which had been reaching for his wine glass, stopped. His dark eyes shifted slowly toward the twins. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "What did you just say?" His voice was low, dangerous, each syllable weighted with authority that had made grown men confess their sins. Zara forced herself to meet his gaze. "The locket, around your neck. Our mother had one exactly like it." The entire room held its breath. Jaemin stood slowly, his 6-foot frame unfolding with predatory grace. He moved toward them with deliberate steps, and Zara could see the muscles in his jaw tightening. Behind him, his right-hand man Min-seok shifted uncomfortably, his hand moving instinctively toward his jacket. "Everyone out," Jae-Min commanded without taking his eyes off the twins. "Now." The room emptied in seconds. Politicians scrambled, crime lords departed without protest, bodyguards retreated to the hallway. Only Min-seok hesitated at the door. "Boss, perhaps I should—" "I said everyone." The door clicked shut. The twins stood alone with the most dangerous man in Seoul's underworld, their violins suddenly feeling like inadequate shields. Jaemin stopped 3 feet away from them, close enough that they could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow. Close enough to notice how his breathing had changed. He reached up slowly and touched the locket, his fingers trembling almost imperceptibly. "Where did you see this locket before?" His voice had lost some of its edge, replaced by something raw and unguarded. "Before we dive deeper into what happened next, I need you to do something. If you're invested in this story, if you want to know how 2 girls from Nigeria ended up confronting a Korean Mafia boss about a locket their mother wore, hit that subscribe button right now. This story has more twists than you can imagine, and you won't want to miss a single moment. Drop a comment telling me what you think is going to happen. Now, let's continue." Zara exchanged a glance with Amina before speaking. "Our mother wore it every single day of our lives. She never took it off. Not when she cooked, not when she slept, not even when she showered. It was shaped like a dragon, exactly like yours, but hers had the left wing. Yours has the right." Jaemin's hand dropped from the locket. He took a step back, his expression cycling through emotions faster than the twins could track. Shock, disbelief, something that looked like pain. "Your mother," he said carefully. "What was her name?" "Amara Okonkwo." The name hit him like a physical blow. He turned away from them, his hand gripping the back of a chair so hard his knuckles went white. For a long moment, the only sound was the distant hum of the city outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Amara," he whispered, and the twins had never heard their mother's name spoken with such aching tenderness. Amina stepped forward, You knew her. It wasn't a question, but Jae-Min answered anyway. I loved her. He turned back to face them, and his eyes were different now. Haunted. 20 years ago, I loved her more than my own life. Zara felt tears prickling her eyes. She's gone. She disappeared 6 months ago. Before she left, she told us that if anything happened to her, we should find the man who wore the other half of the locket. We found a photo in her journal. A young man in Lagos wearing that exact locket. We tracked you here. She never told you about me? She never told us anything about Korea, Amina said. She was secretive about her past. We knew she lived here once, but every time we asked, she would get this sad look in her eyes and change the subject. Jae-Min moved to the window, staring out at Seoul's glittering skyline. How old are you, both of you? 19. We're twins, born in January. He did the math quickly, his jaw clenching. Sit down, both of you. I need to know everything. The twins sat, still clutching their violins like lifelines. Jae-Min poured 3 glasses of water from a crystal pitcher and handed them each one before settling into the chair across from them. Up close, they could see the weight he carried. Not just power, but pain. Start from the beginning, he said. Zara took a shaky breath. Mom raised us alone in Lagos. She worked as a translator. She was fluent in Korean, English, Igbo, and 3 other languages. She made enough to give us a good life. We never wanted for anything. She put us through private school, paid for our violin lessons, supported our dreams. But she was always so careful, always looking over her shoulder. She had nightmares, Amina added. We'd hear her crying in her room some nights, saying I'm sorry over and over in Korean. We asked her once what she was sorry for. She just held us tight and said, some choices protect the people you love, even when they break your heart. Jae-Min's fingers tightened around his glass. Continue. 6 months ago, things changed, Zara said. She started getting phone calls that made her nervous. She'd take them in another room, speaking in rapid Korean. Then one night, she came into our room and sat on our beds. She looked terrified. She said, if anything happens to me, remember this. Find the man with the dragon locket. He'll keep you safe. I left him once to protect him, but he's the only one who can protect you now. The next morning she was gone, Amina whispered. Her bed was made, her clothes were still in the closet, but she was just gone. No note except for the journal she left on our pillows. Inside was a photo of a young man in Lagos, standing on a street corner wearing half of a dragon locket. On the back, she'd written your name in Seoul. Jae-Min stood abruptly and walked to a cabinet, pulling out a folder. He returned and placed a photograph on the table between them. Is this her? The twins gasped in unison. It was their mother, but younger. Maybe 25 years old. She was laughing in the photo, her head thrown back, her eyes bright with joy they'd rarely seen. And next to her, with his arm around her waist, was a younger version of the man sitting across from them. That was taken in Lagos, Jae-Min said quietly. 20 years ago. I was there expanding our operations into West Africa. I was arrogant, reckless, thought I was untouchable because of my family's power. Then one night a rival gang ambushed me on Victoria Island. 5 men with guns. To it I was cornered. He touched the scar above his eyebrow. Your mother appeared out of nowhere. She hit the first guy with a tire iron, screamed for help in Yoruba, and dragged me into a nearby compound before they could react. She saved my life that night. Zara leaned forward. She never told us she'd done anything like that. She was fearless, Jae-Min continued, and for a moment his expression softened into something almost tender. I tried to pay her, offer her money, protection, anything. She refused, said she didn't save people for profit. I was fascinated. In my world, everyone wanted something, but not Amara. What happened? Amina asked. I stayed in Lagos longer than planned. I told myself it was for business, but really, I just wanted to see her again. I found her at the university where she worked as a translator. I asked her to dinner. She said no. I asked again the next day. She said no again. I asked for 2 weeks straight before she finally agreed. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. That dinner changed my life. She challenged me in ways no one had ever dared. Questioned my choices, my business, the violence I thought was necessary. She saw through the power and the money to something I'd forgotten existed. The person I could have been. We fell in love, and for the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to be human, not just powerful. The lockets, Zara prompted gently. Jae-Min reached up and removed the locket from around his neck, opening it carefully. Inside was a tiny photograph of a younger Amara, her smile radiant. I had these made by a jeweler in Chinatown. A dragon split in two. She got the left wing, I got the right. I told her that when I returned to Seoul to settle my affairs, I'd come back for her. We'd be together, whole, like the dragon. I promised her she'd never have to be apart from me again. His voice cracked slightly. I meant it, every word. I spent 3 months in Seoul arranging everything, finding a way to keep her safe from my world, planning our future. When I returned to Lagos, she was gone. The compound where she lived was empty. Her colleagues at the university said she'd resigned suddenly. I searched everywhere, hired investigators, used every resource I had. She'd vanished completely. You thought she left you, Amina said softly. I thought she realized what being with me would mean. The danger, the violence, the darkness. I thought she'd chosen freedom over me. I couldn't blame her. But it destroyed something in me, and I threw myself into the business, became colder, more ruthless. The locket was the only piece of her I kept. A reminder that love was a weakness I couldn't afford. Zara felt tears streaming down her face. She didn't leave because she wanted to. Someone made her. Jae-Min's eyes sharpened. What do you mean? In her journal, there were entries we didn't understand at first. Coded language, fragments of thoughts. But one entry was clear. It said, they threatened him. If I stay, he dies. This is the only way to keep him safe. He'll hate me, but he'll be alive. That's all that matters. The glass in Jae-Min's hand shattered. He didn't seem to notice the blood welling up from his palm. Someone threatened her? Who? When? We don't know, Amina said. But Mr. Kang, we need to ask you something. We need to know the truth. He looked at them, really looked at them. An understanding began to dawn in his eyes. You want to know if I'm your father? Are you? Zara's voice was barely a whisper. Jae-Min studied their faces with new intensity. He saw his own sharp jawline in their features. His eyes reflected back at him, the way they held themselves with a pride that reminded him of himself at their age. I don't know, he admitted. But we're going to find out. Wait here. He left the room, returning minutes later with Min Seok and a man carrying a medical kit. Dr. Han will take samples, DNA test. We'll have results within 24 hours. The doctor worked efficiently, taking cheek swabs from all 3 of them. Min Seok watched from the corner, his expression unreadable. When the doctor left, Jae-Min dismissed Min Seok with a curt nod, but the twins noticed how the right-hand man hesitated, his eyes lingering on them with something that looked like concern or calculation. You'll stay at one of my properties until we get the results, Jae-Min said. You're not safe if someone was willing to threaten Amara 20 years ago. They might still be watching. We can take care of ourselves, Zara protested. Your mother thought the same thing. Look where that got her. His tone was sharp, but they could hear the fear underneath. Please, let me do this. The twins exchanged glances. Amina nodded slightly. Okay. What they didn't see was Min Seok in the hallway. His phone already pressed to his ear, his voice low and urgent. We have a problem. The girls are claiming to be his daughters. He's running a DNA test. Yeah, we need to handle this before the results come back. The safe house was a modern apartment in Gangnam, all glass and steel and minimalist luxury. 2 bodyguards were stationed outside, and Jae-Min personally checked every room before leaving them. Don't open the door for anyone, he instructed. Not even if they say they're from me. I'll call before I come. Keep your phones on. After he left, the twins sat in the living room, overwhelmed by everything that had happened. Zara pulled out their mother's journal, flipping through the pages they'd read 100 times. Do you think he's really our father? Amina asked. Look at us, Amina. We have his eyes, his chin, the way we stand. Mom used to say we stood like royalty, remember? Maybe that came from him. If he is, that means Mom kept him from us our whole lives. So why would she do that? Zara's finger traced one of their mother's journal entries. Because she loved him. And she thought keeping a secret would keep all of us safe. The question is, safe from what? 20 years earlier in Lagos, a younger Jae-Min sat across from Amara in a small restaurant, watching her laugh at something he'd said. She wore a simple dress, her natural hair styled in braids, and she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. "You're staring again," she teased. "I'm memorizing you, in case this is all a dream. You're ridiculous." But she was smiling. "Tell me something real, Jae-Min. Not the business talk, not the surface things. Tell me something true." He reached across the table and took her hand. "I've killed people, Amara. I've done things that would make you run from this table. And I'm not a good man. I know who you are, what you do." She squeezed his hand. "I'm asking who you want to be." "With you. I want to be someone worthy of that smile. Someone who builds instead of destroys. Someone who protects instead of threatens." "Then be that person." "It's not that simple. My family, the organization, nothing worth having is simple." She pulled her hand back gently. "But I won't be with half a man, Jae-Min. If you want me, you have to choose. The violence or the love. You can't have both." He'd chosen her. Or he'd tried to. He'd spent 3 months in Seoul dismantling the parts of his life that would endanger her, creating barriers between his legitimate businesses and the criminal operations. He'd fought with his father, argued with the council, made enemies of people who thought he was going soft. And when he'd returned to Lagos with a ring in his pocket and a plan for their future, she was gone. Back in the present, Jae-Min sat in his office, the DNA test results expected by morning. Min Seok entered without knocking, something he only did when they were alone. "This is dangerous, Jae-Min. I'm aware. If they're really your daughters, it changes the succession. The council won't accept. The council will accept what I tell them to accept." Jae-Min's voice was steel. "You've been with me for 15 years, Min Seok. In all that time, have you ever known me to care about the council's opinions?" Min Seok's jaw tightened. "No. But I've also never seen you let emotion cloud your judgment. These girls could be anyone. They could be con artists who found an old photo and crafted a story. They have Amara's eyes. So do thousands of other people." Min Seok moved closer. "I'm trying to protect you. That's my job. Let me run a deeper background check. Let me investigate their story Before I what? Care about them? Too late." Jae-Min turned to face his second-in-command fully. "You didn't know Amara. You don't understand what she was to me. I know she left you. I know you nearly destroyed yourself trying to find her. I watched you become the leader you are now because you stopped letting love make you weak. Maybe I don't want to be that leader anymore." The words hung in the air between them. Min Seok's expression flickered. Anger, fear, something else the twins couldn't have named even if they'd been there to see it. "Nim, get some rest," Jae-Min said, dismissing him. "Tomorrow will be complicated regardless of the results." Min Seok bowed slightly and left, but his hands were shaking as he pulled out his phone in the elevator. He dialed a number he hadn't called in 20 years. "It's me," he said when someone answered. "She had children, twins. He's running a DNA test. If it comes back positive, everything we did will have been for nothing. We need to finish this, tonight." At the safe house, Zara woke to the sound of breaking glass. She sat up instantly, her hand reaching for Amina in the next bed. "Did you hear that?" "The window," Amina whispered. "Someone's inside." They heard footsteps in the hallway. Too many footsteps. The bodyguards outside should have been there, should have stopped anyone from getting close. The fact that they hadn't either meant they were dead or they were part of this. Zara grabbed her phone and dialed Jae-Min's number with shaking fingers. It rang once before a hand clamped over her mouth and the phone was ripped away. A masked figure stood over her bed, and she could see at least 3 more in the doorway. "No screaming," a voice said in accented English. "You come quietly, nobody gets hurt." Amina kicked out, catching one of them in the knee. He went down with a curse, and suddenly the room erupted in chaos. Zara bit down hard on the hand covering her mouth, tasting blood. She rolled off the bed as someone lunged for her. "Run!" Amina screamed, grabbing a lamp and smashing it into the nearest attacker's face. They made it to the hallway, but there were more men waiting. Zara felt hands grab her from behind, Mai lifting her off her feet. She fought, kicking and clawing, but there were too many of them. Then the front door exploded inward. Jae-Min entered like a force of nature, his suit jacket gone, his eyes blazing with fury the twins had only glimpsed before. He moved through the attackers with brutal efficiency, a knife appearing in his hand from nowhere, precise strikes that dropped men without hesitation. "Touch them again and you die slowly," he snarled, and the promise in his voice was absolute. The remaining attackers tried to flee, but Jae-Min's own security team had arrived, blocking the exits. Within minutes, the apartment was secured, the attackers either unconscious or restrained. Jae-Min crossed the room to where the twins stood huddled together, both shaking with adrenaline. He knelt in front of them, in his hands hovering uncertainly before settling gently on their shoulders. "Are you hurt? Did they touch you?" "We're okay," Zara managed, though tears were streaming down her face. "How did you know?" "I had additional security watching the building. They reported suspicious movement." His eyes scanned them both, checking for injuries with the same intensity he'd used to fight. "This was my fault. I underestimated how quickly they'd move." "Who's they?" Amina demanded. "Who's trying to kill us?" "I don't know yet, but I will." He stood, his expression hardening as he turned to his security chief. "Interrogate them. I want names within the hour, and find out how they got past my guards." "2 of your guards are dead, boss," the security chief reported grimly. "Throats cut. They never had a chance to call for help." Jae-Min's jaw clenched. "Then we have a traitor inside, someone who knew where they were staying, and when the guard rotation changed." He looked back at the twins. "You're coming with me. No more safe houses. You stay where I can see you until I know who I can trust." He took them to his private residence, a penthouse that made the safe house look modest. The sun was rising over Seoul as they entered, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Jae-Min led them to a sitting room and poured them tea with steady hands, though the twins could see the rage still simmering beneath his controlled exterior. "I need you to understand something," he said, as he handed them the cups. "In my world, violence is currency. Power is the only language people speak. I've spent 20 years building walls around myself, becoming someone that people fear too much to challenge. But tonight, when I got the call that you were in danger, those walls came down. All I could think was that I'd found you just to lose you again." "You barely know us," Zara said softly. "I know enough. You have your mother's courage, her strength, and possibly my stubbornness." He almost smiled. "The DNA results will be ready in a few hours. But honestly, I don't need them to tell me what I already feel here." He touched his chest. "You're mine, and I protect what's mine." Before they could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his expression darkened. "The results are early. Dr. Han rushed them through after hearing about the attack." He opened the email, and the twins watched his face as he read. And they saw the moment the words registered, his eyes closing briefly, his breath catching, his hand tightening on the phone. "What does it say?" Amina whispered. Jae-Min looked up at them, and his eyes were bright with unshed tears. 99.9% match. You're my daughters. Both of you." His voice broke on the last word. "I have daughters." Zara started crying first. Then Amina joined her, and suddenly all 3 of them were standing together, Jae-Min's arms wrapped around them both as they sobbed. 20 years of loss, of questions, of longing poured out in that moment. "I'm sorry," he kept saying. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I didn't know. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you or your mother." "It's not your fault," Zara said against his shoulder. "You didn't know we existed. But I should have found her. Should have looked harder. Should have known she wouldn't have just left without a reason." They stood like that for a long time, a family learning each other's rhythms. Finally, Jae-Min pulled back, wiping his eyes unself-consciously. "I need to know who tried to take you tonight. And I need to know what happened to Amara 20 years ago. Those 2 things are connected. I'd bet my life on it." His phone rang. He answered it. his expression growing darker with each passing second. When he hung up, his voice was cold enough to freeze blood. One of the attackers talked. They were hired through intermediaries, but the original order came from within my organization. Someone with enough authority to access security schedules and safe house locations. Who? Amina asked. There are only 3 people with that level of access. Me, my security chief, and Min Seok. The twins watched as their father's face transformed into something truly frightening. This was the Mafia boss, the man whose name made criminals fear the dark. "Gather the council," he said into his phone. "I want everyone in the main office in 2 hours. And bring Min Seok. Tell him it's about the succession. He'll come." He turned to his daughters. "I need you to stay here. I'm leaving my most trusted guards. Men who've been with me since before Min Seok. Don't open the door for anyone. I'll return when this is finished." "Let us come with you," Zara said. "This is about us too." "No, this is about protecting you. And I can't do that if I'm worried about you being in the room when I handle this." "Handle what?" Amina pressed. Jae-Min's smile was terrible to behold. "Justice." The main office of the Kang organization was underground, accessed through a legitimate shipping company. The council room was designed to intimidate, high ceilings, dark wood, a massive table that had witnessed the resolution of countless conflicts. When Jae-Min entered, the council members were already seated. Min Seok stood near the head of the table, his expression confident. He'd been expecting this meeting to be about announcing the twins as pretenders, about Jae-Min reaffirming his commitment to the organization over personal feelings. "Thank you all for coming," Jae-Min said, taking his seat. "I have news about the succession. But first, Min Seok, I need you to explain something to me." "Of course, boss. Anything." "Explain why the attackers at the safe house last night were hired through shell companies that trace back to accounts you established 3 years ago." The room went silent. Min Seok's confident expression faltered. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult my intelligence." Jae-Min's voice was quiet, deadly. "I've had my forensic accountants going through every transaction from those accounts. Very interesting pattern. Small payments to various individuals who later turned up dead or disappeared, including payments made 20 years ago to a mercenary group operating in West Africa." Min Seok's face went pale. "Boss, I can explain. Can you? Can you explain why you've been systematically eliminating anyone who might threaten your position as my second? Can you explain why you paid someone to force Amara Okonkwo out of Lagos 20 years ago? It was for your protection." Min Seok's composure cracked. "She was making you weak. You were talking about leaving the organization, about building a legitimate life. You would have destroyed everything your father built." "My father built an empire on blood and fear. Amara was showing me there was another way." "There is no other way. Not for men like us." Min Seok was standing now, his voice rising. "I saved you from making the biggest mistake of your life. You would have gotten yourself killed trying to go legitimate. The other families would have seen it as weakness and moved against you. So you took that choice away from me. You threatened her, told her I'd die if she didn't leave." "Yes." Min Seok slammed his hand on the table. "Yeah, and it worked. You became the leader you were meant to be. Strong, ruthless, feared. Everything you are now, you are because she left." Jae-Min stood slowly. "Everything I am now is a hollow shell. For 20 years, I've been half alive, wearing this locket as a reminder of what I lost. You didn't save me, Min Seok. You destroyed me. I protected the organization. You protected your own power, because if I'd left with Amara, you'd have lost your position. All of this, the threats, the separation, probably even her disappearance 6 months ago. It was about keeping yourself relevant." Min Seok's hand moved toward his jacket, but Jae-Min was faster. He had a gun pointed at his second before Min Seok's fingers touched his weapon. "Don't." Jae-Min's voice was arctic. "The DNA test came back. Those girls are my daughters, my heirs. And every move you've made to eliminate them has been a direct attack on my bloodline. The council knows what that means." Around the table, the other members nodded grimly. Attacking a boss's family was an unforgivable crime in their world. I gave you everything, Jae-Min continued. Loyalty, trust, power. And you repaid me by stealing 20 years of my life. 20 years with the woman I loved. 20 years with my daughters. You can't give that back, but you're going to give me something else. What? Min Seok asked, defeated. The truth. Where is Amara? What happened to her 6 months ago? Min Seok laughed bitterly. You think I know? I lost track of her years ago. She disappeared into Japan somewhere. I heard rumors, but nothing concrete. When I found out recently that she had daughters, that they were looking for you, I panicked. I tried to have them eliminated before they could reach you. But I have no idea where she is now. You're lying. I'm not. If I knew where she was, don't you think I would have finished the job 20 years ago? I just wanted her gone, not dead. I needed you functional, not destroyed by grief. Jae-Min studied him, and the twins would have recognized the analytical expression, the same one they used when evaluating a difficult piece of music. Finally, he lowered the gun. The council will vote on your fate, but as of this moment, you're stripped of all authority. Take him to the holding rooms. Security guards moved forward, restraining Min Seok despite his protests. As they dragged him away, he shouted, I did this for you. Everything I did was for you. When the room was clear except for the council members, Jae-Min addressed them formally. The DNA tests confirm that Zara and Amina Okonkwo are my legitimate daughters. I'm claiming them as my heirs. Any objections? The oldest council member, a man who'd known Jae-Min's father, spoke carefully. They're untrained, unknown to our world. This will create instability. Then we'll train them, and anyone who sees their existence as an opportunity to move against me will learn why I've held this position for 2 decades. And their mother? If she's alive, she represents a weakness that our enemies will exploit. Their mother, Jae-Min said softly, is the only person who ever made me want to be better than this. If she's alive, I'm going to find her. And I'm going to protect her and my daughters with everything I have. Is that clear? The council members exchanged glances. Finally, the oldest one nodded. Clear, boss. We'll support the succession. But the girls need to understand what they're inheriting. This life isn't kind to the unprepared. They have Amara's strength and my blood. They'll be fine. Jae-Min returned to his penthouse to find his daughters asleep on the couch, curled against each other like they probably had as children. He stood watching them for a long moment, memorizing their faces, seeing both himself and Amara in their features. One of them, Zara, opened her eyes. Is it done? It's done. Min Seok has been dealt with. The council has accepted you as my heirs. We don't want to be mafia princesses, she said quietly. We just wanted to find out what happened to our mom. I know, but this life doesn't ask what we want. It just is. He sat in the chair across from them. So, and I'm going to find her, your mother. I have resources now that I didn't have 20 years ago. If she's alive anywhere in the world, I'll bring her home. What if she doesn't want to be found? What if she left to protect us all and we're ruining that by being here? Jae-Min's expression softened. Then I'll ask her directly. Face to face. No more running, no more intermediaries, no more threats. Just the truth, finally. Over the next 3 weeks, Jae-Min deployed every resource at his disposal. Private investigators across 3 continents, hackers tracing digital footprints, informants in every major city. The twins stayed at his penthouse, learning about the empire they'd inherited, meeting the legitimate business managers who ran the family's above-board operations. They discovered their father was more complex than they'd imagined. Yes, he controlled criminal operations, but he also owned hospitals, schools, and community centers throughout Korea. He funded scholarships, supported orphanages, and had strict rules about what his organization would and wouldn't do. No human trafficking, no drugs to minors, no unnecessary violence. Your mother would have hated most of what I do, he admitted one evening over dinner. But I've tried to honor her memory by building something alongside the darkness. Something that helps instead of just taking. She would have seen the good in you, Amina said. She always saw the good in everyone. Then on a Tuesday afternoon, Jae-Min received the call. One of his investigators in Japan had found something. A woman matching Amara's description. living under a false name in Kyoto, working as a translator for a small international firm. Are you sure it's her? Jae-Min asked, his hand trembling slightly. 90% sure. She's been very careful, but she made a mistake 6 months ago, filed some paperwork using a variation of her real name. We tracked her from there. Don't approach her. Just watch. Make sure she's safe. I'll be there tomorrow. He turned to his daughters, and they could see the fear in his eyes. I found her. Or we might have. I need to go to Japan to be sure. We're coming with you, Zara said immediately. This might not be safe. If Min Seok had people looking for her, we're coming, Amina repeated firmly. We're a family now. We face this together. The flight to Kyoto felt endless. Jae-Min sat between his daughters, his knee bouncing with nervous energy for the first time they'd ever seen. He'd faced down rival gangs, negotiated with politicians, ordered men to their deaths without flinching. But the thought of seeing Amara again after 20 years had him terrified. What if she doesn't want to see me? He asked quietly. She kept your locket half, Zara reminded him. She told us to find you. She never stopped loving you, Dad. She just thought she was protecting you. The word Dad still made him pause every time. He'd had 3 weeks to get used to it, but it still felt like a gift he didn't deserve. They arrived in Kyoto in the evening. Jae-Min's investigator met them at a traditional inn, spreading out surveillance photos on a low table. She works at this translation firm. Lives alone in a small apartment about 3 blocks away. She's careful, varies her routes, doesn't socialize much, keeps to herself. But it's definitely her. Jae-Min picked up one of the photos. It showed a woman in her mid-40s, her natural hair now threaded with gray, her face more lined than he remembered, but still beautiful. She was smiling at something someone had said, and his heart stopped. Amara, he whispered. What do we do? Zara asked. We wait. Tomorrow morning she usually stops at a small cafe on her way to work. We'll be there. None of them slept that night. They sat together in the inn's common room, drinking tea and talking about everything and nothing. Jae-Min told them stories about their mother, how she'd laughed at his terrible Igbo pronunciation, how she'd challenged him to be honest about his life, how she'd made him feel human for the first time. Do you ever think about finding someone else? Amina asked. No, there was only ever her. I wore the locket as punishment and promise. Punishment for losing her. Promise that I'd never stop looking. He touched the locket now. Tomorrow, I give it back. Morning came too slowly and too fast. They positioned themselves at the cafe before sunrise, taking a table with a clear view of the street. Jae-Min's security team was scattered around the area, invisible but present. And then they waited. She appeared at exactly 8:15, just as the investigator had predicted. Amara walked down the street with quick, efficient steps, her bag over her shoulder, her expression preoccupied. She was older, yes, but still undeniably her. Jae-Min stood, and the simple movement made her glance toward the cafe window. Their eyes met across the glass, and the world stopped. Amara froze on the sidewalk. Her bag slipped from her shoulder. Her hand came up to her mouth, and they could see her lips form his name even through the glass. He walked out of the cafe slowly, afraid she might run, afraid this was a dream. She didn't move, just stood there crying as he approached. Amara, you found me, she whispered. After all this time, you found me. Did you think I wouldn't? Did you think I'd ever stop looking? I hoped you would. I hoped you'd move on, find someone who could give you a normal life. I hoped, her voice broke, I hoped you'd forget me. Impossible. He was close enough now to see the tears on her cheeks, to smell the jasmine perfume she'd always worn. There's something I need to show you. Someone. 2 someones. Actually, he gestured toward the cafe, where Zara and Amina had stepped out onto the sidewalk. Amara's eyes went wide as she saw them, her daughters standing together and looking so much like the man she'd loved and the woman she'd been. My babies, she sobbed. My girls, how did you… We found Dad's locket, Zara said, moving forward. We found him, and he found you. Amara looked between them and Jae-Min, understanding dawning. You know they're yours? DNA test confirmed it. These are our daughters, Amara. Ours. And you kept them from me for 20 years. He said it without anger, just infinite sadness. Amara flinched as if struck. I had to. They told me if I stayed, they'd kill you. They had proof, photos of your movements, your schedule, your vulnerabilities. And they said you'd made too many enemies and my presence was making you weak. I had to choose between my love for you and your life. So I chose your life. Who told you this? A man, Korean. He said he was your second in command, that he was trying to save you from yourself. He gave me money to disappear and threatened to hurt you if I ever came back. I found out I was pregnant a week after I left. I almost came back then, but I was so afraid. Afraid they'd use the babies against you or against me, or hurt them to punish us both. Jae-Min's jaw clenched. Min Seok. I never knew his name, but yes, he's been monitoring me periodically over the years. 6 months ago, I got a message saying my daughters were making inquiries about Korea, about you. The message said if they came looking for you, they'd be killed. So I disappeared again, and was trying to lead any danger away from them. But they're so stubborn, just like you. They found me anyway, and someone tried to kill them. Amara's face went white. No, I did everything to prevent. It's handled, Jae-Min said quickly. Min Seok is in custody. They're safe. You're safe. It's over, Amara. She swayed and he caught her, his arms going around her for the first time in 20 years. She felt different, older, the softness of youth, replaced by the wiriness of someone who'd survived. But she still fit against him perfectly. I'm sorry, she kept saying. I'm so sorry. I should have told you about them. Should have found another way. Should have trusted you to protect us. You did protect us. You sacrificed everything to keep me alive. How can I be angry about that? They stood like that in the middle of the street, blocking traffic, the twins watching with tears in their eyes. Finally, Jae-Min pulled back enough to remove his locket. He opened it, showing her the tiny photograph he'd carried for 20 years, then removed it from the chain. I have something that belongs to you, he said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out the left-wing dragon locket, the one Zara and Amina had brought from Lagos. Our daughters kept it safe. Now I'm going to do what I should have done 20 years ago. He placed both halves together and they clicked into place with a soft sound, forming one complete dragon. Then he slipped the chain around Amara's neck, his fingers lingering on her skin. Whole again, he whispered, like we should have been all along. Amara touched the locket, feeling its familiar weight. What happens now? You have a life in Seoul. And I have a life here. And the girls are our daughters. They're heirs to everything I've built. And you're the love of my life. What happens now is we stop running. Stop hiding. Stop letting fear make our decisions. He cupped her face gently. I'm not the same man I was 20 years ago. I'm harder, colder in some ways. But these past weeks with our daughters have reminded me of who I wanted to be when I was with you. Come home, Amara. All of you. Come home to Seoul, and let me spend the rest of my life making up for the 20 years we lost. Your world is dangerous. Everywhere is dangerous. At least in Seoul, I can protect you properly. No more intermediaries, no more threats, no more running. If you've made it this far, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what you thought of this story. And if you want more emotional, powerful stories like this, subscribe to the channel. Trust me, you won't regret it. Amara looked at her daughters, these beautiful young women she'd raised alone, who'd been brave enough to cross the world searching for answers. What do you two think? Do you want to go to Seoul? To be part of his world? Zara and Amina exchanged glances, that twin communication that needed no words. Then Zara spoke. We want to be a family. We've had just you for 19 years, Mom. We love you more than anything. But we also want to know our father. We want to understand where we come from. And honestly, Seoul sounds a lot more interesting than going back to Lagos without you. Amina added, plus, we're apparently Mafia princesses now. Might as well lean into it. That broke the tension. Amara laughed, the sound rusty from disuse but genuine. Mafia princesses, my God, what have I done to you? You raised us to be strong, independent, and brave, Zara said. That's what you've done. They returned to Seoul 3 days later, after Amara settled her affairs in Kyoto. The flight back felt different from the flight there. Instead of nervous anticipation, there was cautious hope. Jae-Min had prepared his penthouse for their arrival, setting up rooms for each of them. Filling the refrigerator with foods he remembered Amara loving. When they arrived, he gave them the full tour, showing them the legitimate businesses he ran from the upper floors, carefully avoiding any mention of the darker operations in the basement levels. I know what you do, Amara said quietly when they were alone on the balcony that evening. The twins had gone to their rooms, exhausted from travel and emotion. You don't have to hide it from me. I'm not hiding it. I'm just not forcing you to look at it. Jae-Min, she turned to face him. I knew who you were 20 years ago. I knew what you did. I fell in love with you anyway. That hasn't changed. Everything else has. I'm not trying to go legitimate anymore. I've accepted what I am. Have you? Or have you just convinced yourself that you don't deserve anything better? He flinched. You always could see right through me. That's because I love you. I never stopped loving you, even when I thought I'd never see you again. She took his hand. I'm not asking you to change who you are. I'm just asking you to remember that you're more than just this empire. You're a father now. Our daughters need to see that there's more to you than power and fear. I don't know how to be a father. Neither did you know how to be in love. But you figured that out pretty quickly. She smiled. We'll learn together. All 4 of us. Over the following weeks, they began to build something that resembled a family. Mornings were surprisingly domestic. Jae-Min learned that he actually enjoyed making breakfast, that hearing his daughters argue over who got the last piece of fruit made him feel human. Amara resumed her translation work, but for Jae-Min's legitimate businesses this time, helping him expand into new international markets. The twins enrolled in a prestigious music academy in Seoul, and their violin skills earning them immediate respect. But they also started learning about their father's empire, sitting in on legitimate business meetings, understanding the complex web of companies and operations that sustain the organization. One evening, about 2 months after Amara's return, the entire family gathered for dinner. No bodyguards, no business associates, just the 4 of them. Jae-Min had insisted on cooking, and while the results were somewhat questionable, the effort was appreciated. I have a question, Zara said as they ate. Why didn't you come for Mom earlier? You had resources. Investigators. You could have found her years ago. It was the question they'd all been dancing around. Jae-Min set down his fork carefully. I did search. For the first 5 years, I never stopped searching. But I was looking in the wrong places. I assumed she'd gone back to Nigeria, so that's where I focused. By the time I thought to look elsewhere, the trail was cold. And honestly, part of me had convinced myself she didn't want to be found. That she'd made her choice and I should respect it. That's grief talking, Amara said softly. Not logic. I know that now, but at the time, it felt like the truth. He looked at his daughters. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I didn't know about you. Didn't get to see you grow up. Didn't protect your mother the way I should have. You're here now, Amina said. That's what matters. Is it enough? Just being here? Zara smiled. You made us questionable stir-fry and you're trying really hard not to show how terrified you are of messing this up. So yeah, Dad, it's enough. Later that night, after the twins had gone to bed, Jae-Min and Amara stood on the balcony overlooking Seoul. The city glittered beneath them, and somewhere in those lights were the operations he controlled, the empire he'd built in her absence. I want to ask you something, he said, and I want you to be completely honest. Always. Can you be happy here, with me? Knowing what I do, who I am? Amara was quiet for a long moment. I don't know yet, she admitted. There are parts of your life that frighten me. Choices you make that I'll never agree with. But I also know that you're capable of change, of growth. These past 2 months I've seen you be gentle with our daughters. I've seen you try to be better because they're watching. That's the man I fell in love with. Not the fearless one, but the one who tries. What if trying isn't enough? Then we'll figure it out together. But Jae-Min, you need to understand something. I'm not going to pretend your business doesn't exist. I'm not going to look the other way while people get hurt. If we're going to do this, really do this, you need to let me be part of the conversations about what happens next. Not the daily operations, but the big decisions. The moral ones. You want to be my conscience? I want to be your partner in everything. He pulled her close, breathing in her jasmine scent. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. They stood like that for a long time, two halves finally reunited, looking out at the city that had both separated them and brought them back together. Inside, Zara whispered to Amina in the darkness of their shared room. Do you think they'll make it work? They have to, Amina whispered back. They've spent 20 years apart. That's enough tragedy for one lifetime. What about us? Do you think we can handle being part of this world? We handled tracking down a mafia boss we'd never met. We survived an assassination attempt. We reunited our parents after 2 decades. I think we can handle anything. Zara smiled in the darkness. Mafia princesses. Mafia princesses with excellent taste in music. They fell asleep to the sound of Seoul outside their window, the city that was now their home, the place where their family had finally been made whole. The next morning, Jae-Min called a meeting of his inner circle. His daughters and Amara were present, and much to the surprise of his associates. He stood at the head of the table, his family beside him, and addressed the room with quiet authority. Some of you have been with me for decades. You've seen me build this organization from what my father left into something more powerful, more profitable, more feared. You've followed my orders without question, trusted my judgment, stood with me through wars and negotiations alike. He paused, his hand finding Amara's. But things are changing. I have a family now. Daughters who will inherit everything I've built. A partner who will help me navigate the future. And I'm realizing that the empire I've created needs to evolve if I want it to last beyond my lifetime. What are you saying, boss? One of the older members asked. I'm saying that we're going to start shifting our focus. Less street-level operations, more legitimate business. We'll maintain our power, but we'll exercise it differently. Smarter. My daughters deserve to inherit something they can be proud of, not just feared for. There was murmuring around the table. Change was always met with resistance in their world. But Jae-Min's authority was absolute. And one by one, the members nodded their agreement. Good, he said, because this isn't a request. It's how things are going to be. After the meeting, Amara pulled him aside. That was brave. That was necessary. You were right. I can't give our daughters an empire built entirely on fear and expect them to thrive. They need something more. We'll build it together, she promised. All 4 of us. And they did. Over the months that followed, the Kang organization began to transform. So the violent operations were gradually phased out, replaced by legitimate businesses. It wasn't easy. There was pushback, both internal and external. But Jae-Min held firm, and with Amara's counsel and his daughter's hope driving him forward, he began to build something worthy of the family he'd found. 3 years later, on a warm spring evening, the family gathered again for dinner. This time they were celebrating. Zara and Amina had just performed their first major concert as professional violinists, to rave reviews. Jae-Min had attended in the front row, his pride visible to everyone who knew him. I still can't believe you cried, Amina teased him over dinner. I did not cry. My eyes were merely expressing their appreciation for your artistic excellence. You sobbed like a baby, Zara corrected with a grin. We could hear you from the stage. Amara laughed, her hand covering his. Let him have this. It's not every day a feared mafia boss gets to watch his daughters perform at the National Theater. Former mafia boss, Jae-Min corrected. I'm a legitimate businessman now, remember? Mostly legitimate, Amara amended. Let's be honest. Mostly is better than not at all, he countered, and it's a work in progress. The twins exchanged amused glances. Their father was still learning how to balance the darkness of his past with the light of his present. Some days were better than others, but he was trying, and that effort meant everything. Mom, Zara said suddenly, do you ever regret it? The years apart? Amara considered the question seriously. I regret the circumstances that separated us, and I regret that you grew up without your father. But I don't regret the choices I made, because they kept him alive. And without him alive, we wouldn't be sitting here tonight. No regrets, Jae-Min agreed, raising his glass. Only gratitude that we found each other again. To family, Amina said, raising her glass. To second chances, Zara added. To love that survives everything, Amara finished. They clinked glasses together, four people who'd been separated by circumstances, brought together by courage, held together by love. Later, after their daughters had gone out with friends, Jae-Min and Amara stood on their familiar balcony. The locket, now whole, hung around Amara's neck, catching the moonlight. Do you remember what you promised me in Lagos? Amara asked. Ichi, that we'd never be separated again? That's the one. I've kept it for 3 years now, planning to keep it for the rest of my life. Good. She turned to face him. Because I'm not going anywhere, not anymore. He pulled her close. This woman who'd saved him in more ways than one, who'd given him daughters he didn't deserve, who'd shown him that even men like him could change. I love you, Amara. I've loved you for 23 years, through separation and reunion, through loss and discovery. And I'll love you for whatever time we have left. That's a long time, Kang Jae-Min. Think you can handle it? With you? I can handle anything. They kissed under the Seoul stars. Two halves of a dragon locket finally reunited. Two souls that had found their way back to each other against impossible odds. Behind them, in the city glittered with possibility. Ahead of them, a future they'd build together. And somewhere in the distance, their daughters were laughing, living the lives their parents' sacrifice had made possible, carrying forward the legacy of love that had survived everything. The dragon was whole again, and it would never be broken apart. Before you go, I need you to do me one last favor. If this story touched your heart, if you felt the emotion, the tension, the love, hit that subscribe button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear a story about love that survives everything. Drop a comment and tell me what moment got you the most. Because stories like this deserve to be shared, and your support makes it possible for me to keep bringing them to you. Thank you for staying until the end. Until next time. Now remember, love always finds a way, even when it takes 20 years.